This clip is brought to you by SaveWithConrad.com.
So let's talk a little bit about our topic. It's AJ Styles. I don't know how we could ever really do a single episode on AJ Styles. I don't think that we can, but we're talking about him today because, well, everybody has made a joke of this. I always remind everybody how old AJ is, because sometimes we look back at, what was written about guys like Hulk Hogan and Ric Flair 20, 25 years ago. And boy, people have some really strong opinions. Well, I'm glad to remind everybody that just a few days ago, AJ Styles turned 45, and he's still one of the very best wrestlers in the world. He started his career in 1998, and he was using the name Mr. Olympia. I don't know if he was like a super Arn Anderson fan or what, but he's doing that on the indies. And then eventually he's given the name AJ Styles in NWA Wildside. He was working there from 99 to 2000. We haven't spent a ton of time talking about Bill Behrens on this show. We did mention him briefly in some of the formation of TNA episodes, but NWA Wildside was sort of his baby. What can you tell us about Cornelia, Georgia and Wildside?
You brought up Bill Behrens, and I called Bill, Conrad. I'm your good podcast partner, but our research team can go through it, and Derek can source out what was online, but Bill was the guy that literally repped AJ from day. He got him booked as an extra in WCW. Bill NWA Wildside, so he promoted North Georgia, but Bill's agent. Bill still does third party bookings, even for my dad. Occasionally he'll call up my dad and said, "Hey, Jerry, you want to go sign autographs at so-and-so?" So Bill has been a quasi agent for a lot of folks, or a third party booker. He worked for TNA off and on many times. But he's the one that, as AJ was breaking in and getting his feet wet, he guided AJ's, especially in his early days. So Bill Behrens, an NWA member. Some people remember him from the Asylum years as an on-screen character, in a lot of different comedy and non-comedy roles. I laid old Bill out with a chair one time. But yeah, Bill was AJ Styles' agent, for the lack of a better word.
And, when you're first starting to, listen, you're in the big time in 99 and 2000. Are you keeping up with any sort of Southern independent wrestling at all? Or are you kind of divorced from all that at this point?
Oh, the madness, and we've multiple episodes, we've talked about WCW in 99 and 2000, the craziness. And again, completely to dial into context, independent wrestling, that was during the era in late 90s, early 2000s. Independent wrestling is nothing like it is today. It was called outlaw wrestling when I broke in 86. So outlaw wrestling migrated over into independent wrestling. And the first time me and AJ met, I was working for WCW. We had a backstage scene, Conrad, and it was something where Double J was getting upset and angry or whatever. And I had to tear through a bunch of extras, and AJ's a hell of a bump taker, and there was an ambulance scene and he took a hell of a bump. That's the first time. I don't remember saying, "Hey, I'm Jeff Jarrett. Hey, I'm Alan Jones." It wasn't that, but that is the first time our paths cross. James Storm did some extra work down there, but that's the first time I met him. But no, I was not keeping up with independent wrestling at the time.
So I want to mention he does wrestle in WCW. It's at the very tail end of WCW. We would see AJ do a few matches on TV. He's a part of the cruiserweight tag team division. He even briefly was on screen there with friend of the show, Mr. Air Paris.
Yep.
Chat me up about if you have any recollection of seeing his work in the ring in WCW. Does that ring a bell at all?
Yes. At WCW, there were a group of, I hate to even say that because it sounds like it, but there were a group of cruiserweights at ringside kind of going through, I don't even know if they were going through a match, but they were going through some things the day of a TV. And I do remember Air Paris and AJ Styles up in the ring, and, I don't say flipping around, jumping around, but, a walkthrough. That's the first earliest, like, oh yeah, the ambulance scene. And then this, obviously I did all that recall as we are about to get into the Australia tours, the WWE pay-per-view, and then the early days of, prior to June 19th, 2002.
So eventually we know WCW goes down. So he's back working with Wildside. He's trying to make more of a name for himself on the indies. And I guess you could say he started to become a bit of an internet darling. This is before that really became common, but it did exist with a handful of guys. He would get a couple of flirtations with WWE. He had some tryouts, taking on the Hurricane, Shane Helms, in January of 2002. Then he was apparently offered a developmental deal. I think he, as the legend goes, turned it down because at the time they would have wanted him to move to Cincinnati, and that would have disrupted his wife's college plans. And I guess it wasn't paying enough money, or what's the version of that story you heard?
Just that. And the things that you just mentioned, at a young age, he was married. And I remember first thinking, dadgum, he's young, because he's like 23, 24. He's married in this business, and he turned down a developmental deal.
Yeah.
This kid's different. This kid's different. Period. You got, you know it as well or better than anybody over the years of podcasting. In 2000, 2001, and now we're talking post the WCW sale.
Everyone clamors to go to Vince because there's nowhere else to go.
The only option to make money. Truly to make money. Japan, but those spots were really few and far between, and for much more established guys. So here's a guy who lives in North Georgia and Cincinnati. I remember thinking, his wife's in school. That's not that far a commute. North Georgia, at Knoxville, at Cincinnati, you're there. It's a 5 hour. So you could live apart. And I get the married life, but I just remember thinking, okay, this guy's different. And boy, did I find out through the years, he's incredibly different thinking.
Give me some examples.
He has a very strong faith. And as a young man in this business that wasn't afraid, he's got coming in the dressing rooms, Bible thumping and preaching and all that. But the conversations, aura is a word. I knew he was a different type of human being than that I had run across in my time in the business. And I don't say that flippantly. I don't say that just to kind of say that. I knew early, here's a different guy, strong faith, incredible, humble upbringing. I knew that he had a tough road. His athletic ability, we all know him as a phenomenal one, but when you see a kid with that kind of athletic ability and teachable and coachable and listened intently, and my dad would teach me the lesson. I didn't always listen. Watch for how guys listen to you, because he would teach me that. Are you listening, or are you just waiting to talk?
Yeah.
I think there's such an enormous difference in that. And AJ was a listener, and he listened intently and wanted to learn. And, a kind of boy next door, wholesome, relatable human being. Again, that's through my upbringing. You can draw money with folks like that because the guy who paid the ticket can relate to him as feel he's not 6'10" and 400 pounds, but then they can't really put into words the athletic ability. So AJ checked all the boxes, but as far as the core human being, I knew from the very first few conversations, this isn't your run-of-the-mill talent that wants to make a name for himself in the business.
Hey, it's Conrad Thompson. Thanks for checking out the podcast here on YouTube. Be sure to hit the subscribe button and the notifications bell so you get a notice anytime we upload some new content. And go save yourself some money right now. If you're in a 30-year loan or you have credit card debt, it's not a matter of if I can save you money. It's a matter of how much. Find out right now for free at SaveWithConrad.com.